we can't do this stuff on our own. Like our ceiling individually is so low compared to if we are working together, the ceiling is so high. It's almost impossible to understate how low our personal ceiling is and how high our group ceiling is, right? If we work together. And so I think it's just about knowing that and then putting the right people around you that you trust and keeping that environment a safe one so that people can question and people can push in the right ways on decision making or thought process or bringing new and fresh ideas to the table.
Welcome to today's episode of Think Outside the Boss. Today, I have the one and only Darrin Murriner. Darrin is the CEO and co-founder of Cloverleaf, which is located here in Cincinnati. It is a Inc. 5000 company. And we take all those personality assessments. Cloverleaf is a place where you store it, and then it sends out digital coaching to yourself and to your team through the tools you're already using, like email, Slack, chat, things like that. So we'll get into that later, but it is such a great tool that has been a real game changer for the companies who are using it. On top of being a CEO and co-founder, Darrin is also the author of the book Corporate Bravery. And I cannot wait to hear about this. It is a book about eliminating fear-based decision-making and transforming corporate cultures into brave places for people to do their best work. He's also been featured in podcasts like The World of Work, Innovation Conversations with NFP, From Founder to CEO, and 9 to Thrive. And also a featured speaker in organizations like SHRM, ATD, Disrupt HR, and HR Collaborative. So let's welcome to the podcast today, Darrin Murriner.
Thanks, Katie. That sounded really comprehensive. I was like, wow, I'm impressed. Who is this guy?
So first question, when did you know that you were a boss?
So when I was in high school, I was 16, and actually, I don't think you can do this now. I think it's illegal, or so I've been told. I managed a Burger King, like an entire restaurant when I was in high school.
At 16.
Yeah, actually, I might have been right around the time I turned 17. So yeah, it could be 17, but I was still in high school. I just remember that it was such a relational shift with the people that I thought were my friends at the time, right? There was this very clear power dynamic that kind of came into play. And I think that was probably the first time that I experienced, I was the same person yesterday, and suddenly there is this power dynamic that shifts our relationship. So that was probably the first time I knew I was a boss. Yeah.
I have to ask, how did you handle that in the moment and being 17?
I mean, I probably made a lot of jokes about it and kind of shook it off. But there were times where I had to with your high school friends, kind of lay down the law, like, hey, you were 5 minutes late from break. These were things that I was now responsible for, and that did feel weird. So yeah, I don't know. I've always had a sense of responsibility, and I think people have always thought I was maybe older than I am. This is before I lost my hair. Now it's easier. I'm trying to go in reverse aging, and that's not really happening. But yeah, when I was younger, I feel like people thought I was a lot older than I was.
That is cool. There are so many questions I have about leading. I mean, it's always a dynamic that we end up going from peer to boss or undergo a promotion. But to do it at 17, did they ultimately, did they respect you, or was it just?
Yeah, they did. I mean, I don't think I used power in a disrespectful or irresponsible way. I also think there was a sense of leadership. Part of the reason why I think I got that promotion was there was very clearly a leadership component, which is also an interesting title for this podcast. I feel like boss. I feel like it has its own weightiness to it that has decades worth of connotations and stuff behind it, which is why it's kind of almost become this slangy term for something completely different in today's culture. Yeah, I don't know. I think I probably always had those leadership qualities that even if I didn't have the actual organizational power. So I don't think it was that big of a difference. And I never really used it to beat people over the head. But so I think people still kind of respected that, even though we were all high schoolers and trying to figure it all out together.
Yeah. And the note on the name of the podcast, it is like intentionally called Think Outside the Boss. So it's a play on think outside the box, but also because boss is an outdated term and there's a lot of baggage with it of like top down thought or, it's my way or the highway and things like that. So that was a very intentional name of the podcast for that reason. All right. So share a time when you hit the wall as a leader and you realized, like, I need to think differently. I need a new idea. I need a book, a mentor, or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I really have so many of these stories. I worked for an insurance company for 10 years, and I remember at one point, it was kind of the first time I was on like a leadership team with other leaders who had been leaders for a long time. And the interesting thing about that dynamic is that you're a team and you have to operate as a team, but you're a bunch of leaders with individual functional roles and teams that you're also protective of and trying to, marshal resources for. And I just think that's a really interesting dynamic where you have people who they've been in a career for a long time. They're clearly accomplished and they've done really great things over the course of their career. And suddenly you have to operate like you're a team, right? Like that team has to be really, really effective. And I think the first time I was in a team like that was it was palatable. Like you could tell that something was different and I needed a different set of skills and a different mindset, honestly, because like for so long it was just kind of like, hey, you're kind of like climbing up the ladder in your own little functional realm. And then it was like, oh, suddenly, and even though like maybe I was good and adept at working politically across other functional areas or other parts of the organization. The first time that you're like truly a leadership team together, it requires a completely different set of skills and a way to like check your own ego, your own ambition, your own agenda in favor of this kind of like larger group dynamic. That's one that comes to mind. But yeah, I have many others.
I know there's so many. There's endless opportunities for us as leaders. With that one, so you described like knowing like I need another skill set. I don't have the skill set for this. What did you do in that moment? Did you seek that new skill set? Did you change roles? Like what happened after that?
Yeah, I think I did what a lot of people do, which is, kind of flounder a little bit in terms of probably didn't behave the way that I needed to, because it's not like somebody tells you, like, hey, all of a sudden you're a leader, but you're also a teammate of
Mhm.
other leaders and you have to work
Mhm.
well together. And you kind of just have to like figure some of that stuff out yourself. And
Yeah.
honestly, it was probably a moment where I felt like I was behaving badly in that team context, and it was like very clear I was behaving badly and nobody called me out, but it's just one of those moments where you like speak something out loud and then you're like, "Oh, I don't like how that sounded." Like I thought that was an inside voice and I said it out loud, and like that's problematic. One, that I'm thinking those things, but then two, that I'm actually verbalizing it in that team context is not good. And I think I probably just killed some credibility with my teammates because I said those things out loud.
Mhm.
And that was a moment where it was kind of like, oh, now that I've brought that into the light and it felt really ugly, I need to think differently. And oftentimes it's less about the skills. Like you can build the skills. It's as much about mindset and recognizing that you had the wrong mindset so that you can actually then start to build those skills and focus your time and attention a little bit differently.
I love that example because it's so relatable. It's so common. And what's unique about your story is that you had the self awareness to know, like, something's off. Oh, did I say that out loud? Like you had that self awareness. You mentioned like no one called you out on it. So, if someone in your, like, fast forward to today, if someone on your team made a comment like that or acted like that, would you call them out on it?
I think our teammates would call me or another one of our team members out on it. And
Hmm.
yeah, I mean, I think that probably actually speaks volume about the effectiveness of that team,
Yeah.
right? Because no one did call me out on it. Realistically, like I think about the leadership team that I have now, which the dynamic is a little bit different because I am the leader of that team. But I even still think in that context, people would call me out if I was behaving or power tripping in a way that was ineffective or maybe even undermining some of the people on the team. And I think that's, to use that really nice HR type word that we love to use, psychological safety, like
Yes.
it's about creating a sense on a team, right? That people can say, hey, I'm going to raise the flag because that doesn't seem right. That doesn't seem consistent with the way that we have all agreed to work together, or with
Mm-hmm.
that's in alignment with the values of the company, or consistent with the way I treat you, right? Those are all
Hmm.
things that I think a good, healthy team dynamic would surface. Then people can behave badly and they're not, and you don't have to be called out in the moment, but at least like pulled aside afterward and said, hey, that wasn't cool. And here's the
Hmm.
reasons why. And you should apologize, or you should circle back with that person, or whatever the case may be, right? I
Hmm.
think that is the
Yep.
difference between a healthy dynamic in a leadership team and a non-healthy dynamic in a leadership team.
The reason I wanted to like focus on that behavior of calling each other out is because my opinion on this has totally changed because I was very conflict avoidant early on. And I think a lot of people are, and they're like, oh, I would never call out Darren in the meeting. I've been in corporate for 20 years and across your career as well. It's like you hear people like, there's all the gossip in the hall, but it's like no one will ever tell that person and essentially give them the feedback that they need to like develop and perform at a higher level. I tell my clients, when you don't give someone that feedback, then you've given up on them. You're like, well, clearly they can't develop, so I'm not even going to try. It just shocked me so much after I left corporate and I'm like working with other clients and building companies of really healthy teams have that behavior where they do call each other out, like both with encouragement and a constructive way of, hey, that's not cool. And I was really shocked to learn that because that was like I said, it totally changed. I've totally flipped my thoughts on that one behavior.
Yeah, so sometimes too, it's just like it's modeled behaviors, right? If they haven't seen it modeled well, then like
Absolutely.
maybe they don't even know it. And then I think also maybe they've not seen it modeled well where like healthy disagreement or conflict has been modeled well. And then the other thing that I think I see quite frequently too is maybe they can't actually put words to it. They
Yeah.
know that behavior, like, well, that didn't feel good, or wow, that felt really ugly. But I don't know what should have been done in that scenario because that's all I've ever seen done in the past. And
Mhm.
you're just like, oh yeah, that's like an acceptable behavior now. And I
Right.
think that's a bigger cultural, like beyond that team, that's like probably a broader cultural issue.
Yeah, it all starts at the top. The culture is defined by the leader, whether they realize it or not. The behaviors that they're allowing, meaning the ones they're not addressing, is a huge part of what builds the culture unintentionally. In addition to the things that they say and they do, it's also what they're tolerating. Yeah. So why don't you share a little bit about Cloverleaf, probably in a much more professional way than I did. But I think it's such a fantastic tool and it can help leaders address some of these problems that we've been talking about.
I think you did a fantastic job of that earlier. We do use behavioral assessments as a key data point in what we would call an AI coaching experience. I think that's a relatively new market segment. Like we spent the first probably 7 years of our business trying to figure out what to call ourselves. Even though we were using machine learning and AI, like that wasn't exactly a sexy thing to say that you were doing 7 years ago. And if you tried to do that in the enterprise, it was just like a clear no go or no fly. And that's all shifted in the last 12 months, let's say. I know it's probably been a little bit longer than that, but in terms of like acceptable enterprise wide. So now we can say that we're an AI coach. What does that mean? Because AI coach means a lot of things to a lot of people. So our focus is really on, hey, how do we take these moments and interactions that you have with other people in your day-to-day work experience, right? We all have frustrations, we all have blockers, even unintentional or intentional, we have blockers, and oftentimes it relates to people and how we work together, right? Yes, we use the behavioral data as a really really great data point to help us personalize that learning experience through coaching. And the other thing that you mentioned is coming into the tools that employees are using every day. So email, calendar, Slack, or Teams. That's where we're communicating and interacting with each other all day, every day. And so, how do we be relevant in those moments so that people are more effective working together? And so that's helpful in a variety of contexts. So what we're talking about here, right? Being a good boss. And so that one-on-one reporting relationship, are we giving good feedback? Is that feedback delivered in a way that's being received? Is the consistency of that good over time so that people are growing and going to a new place? So that's one example. But I mean, I think teaming, and whether that is, hey, I'm on a functional team together, or we're just in a project team of people from different parts of the organization coming together to accomplish something, it's still extremely relevant in that context. Good teams do amazing product development. They are great at delivering value to their clients. They are excellent at delivering amazing code and software products. Like, those are the things that teams do. And unfortunately, there's not a lot of tools and technology or software in the market that really helps us do that. We rely on coaches and mentors and, non-scalable approaches to do that. And, having a technology that can personalize that development and growth at scale is something I think the market's needed for a long time.
I get so excited. I geek out on or behavior assessments. It's probably more accurate than personality, but I love that. I'm certified in some of them. And so I want the audience to hear, like, so typically what will happen is, like, a leader will bring in, like, someone to do disc or Enneagram or Working Genius. They'll bring someone in, like a half day workshop. They'll do their thing. Everyone takes the assessment, we talk about it, we laugh, and then everyone goes back to work and it's business as normal for the most part.
Yeah.
And so where Cloverleaf fits into this is it has a number of those behavioral assessments in there, like DISC, like Enneagram. How many do you have now? Is it 12?
Well, actually, we're 14 at this point. So yeah,
Okay.
you mentioned a couple of the more popular ones, Disc and Enneagram, but like even tools like Clifton Strengths or Insights Discovery are on the platform. The goal, and I think you captured it really well, you have a really great experience, but then people go back Monday morning and you fall right back into the same old routines. There's no real sustained behavior change. And so how do we take that to the next level? And then also, like, especially in larger organizations, you have a favorite, let's say it's Working Genius, and I have a favorite, and let's say it's Clifton Strengths or Enneagram or whatever. And it's kind of like, how do you translate across different models, different languages, and how do you bring that to life when you and I are in a conversation and we've got to work through some heavy stuff? How does that inform that experience in a way that leaves people feeling good, but also having grown and developed themselves in a way that makes not just your relationship better, but the team better?
Mhm. Yeah. And I've seen this used really well by leaders and facilitators too, because it's a way to, again, use that common language. Like, the assessments really give your team a common language. They're all great. They all look at your personality from a different type. And so after you take the assessment, this is a way to help you continue using that language as you move forward. I love to get into the weeds so people can get a visual, but, like, what do leaders do? Do they go into a portal? How do they use it in their, like, everyday job?
Well, I mean, that's a great example right there, because you don't actually have to go into a portal, right? The last thing we all need
Amazing.
as workers is you don't need another tab on your web browser. So it starts with an email in the morning, or it starts with a Slack message or a Microsoft Teams message. And the great thing is we've taken all of the data about your daily experience, right? Who you're meeting with that day. We've looked at maybe feedback that you've given or that people have given about you in the past. And we look at who's your reporting relationships. And maybe, are you a new manager or you just took on a new direct report? All of that data factors into our coaching. So we're giving you exactly what you need at that moment when you need it. So you're about to walk in and have that really difficult conversation. This is how to deliver that. Maybe you even want to role play that. So we even have role play
Mm,
capabilities where you can actually practice that
that's so
conversation.
cool.
Another thing is just nice reminders that, like, man, Katie really needs kudos today. And, here's the way to deliver that to Katie in a way that's going to be most meaningful to her.
People have different ways that they want to be recognized, where some are mortified if you call them out in an all company meeting or tagged on social media, and some really love it. They don't
That's right.
appreciate the one-on-one. Some just need a thank you. Some like gifts. And it could be, like, a $5 gift
Just
card
feeling
for
appreciated,
coffee.
right? And we all feel
Yeah,
appreciated differently. So, yeah.
that's awesome. I do want to talk about your book too.
Sure.
Will you? I love the title, Corporate Bravery. We're all about that here at People Fluent. So please share, like, how did the book come about? Tell us all about it.
So I had a 15-year corporate career. I started out with Arthur Andersen. So I was a consultant. I was in a lot of different organizations. And so I think from a very early stage of my career, I was fascinated by corporate culture and how we could behave and look so differently collectively inside these different organizations, depending on the industry that we're in or the type of work that we're doing, or maybe our approach to the market or the differences in our product suite. And so it was something I'd always been reflecting on. And I think at towards the end of my corporate career, saw a lot of things with some compliance challenges that the company was facing at the time. And one of the things I realized that just became really tangible for me in my last role was how much people are driven by fear. And what ends up happening is you make a lot of really bad business decisions when you're making those decisions from a place of fear, as opposed to a place of like really strong identity, like understanding who we are as an organization, who I am as an individual, what my values are, and how that translates. Because when things are hard, it's those things that tend to be the biggest driver of how we make those decisions. And if you don't have a really clear sense of what those things are, either as an individual or as a team or as an organization, then it's pretty easy to guard against the thing that you're most afraid of. So we highlight some of the ways in that book, I highlight some of the ways that fear kind of dominates these different areas of business. So, like, fear of the competition, regulatory fears, even just like how we approach management and working with each other. Oftentimes it's the unknown. Like, I don't understand Katie. So because I don't understand her, I mistrust her. And it's that
I'm
fear
a
that ends up
mystery.
driving. Yeah, that's not the case. Actually, I do trust Katie
Yeah.
and we have a good relationship. But again, it's fear that drives that interpersonal conflict oftentimes because I just misunderstand the situation, or I'm applying assumptions about why you're behaving the way that you're behaving, as opposed to really seeking to understand, like having that curiosity. And then again, having that really strong sense of identity that helps you work through and push through like the unknown and the scariness of the unknown to say, like, what is the right thing for us in this
Mhm.
moment for this particular business decision? And that it's really one of the hardest things about business. It's one of the hardest things about being a manager or a leader is pushing through the discomfort of the unknown and the scariness
Mm.
of what could happen on the other side and
Mhm.
saying, hey, it's okay to do something that might feel a little countercultural in the moment if you have a strong conviction that it's the right thing to do for the business. And yeah, that's what the book is all about.
I love it. So now I was like, tell me about a time when you did that, like when you trusted your instinct and made that decision in the face of fear.
Yeah, I mean, shoot, even to start this
You're
business
like every
at number,
day.
I mean, it really is. It does feel like every day. And I think when you start something from scratch, right, from an idea to, like we send 65 million coaching moments a year to,
65 million coaching moments.
that's right, 65 million coaching moments through tools that employees use every day. And that was last year. It'll be even more this year. So every year
Yeah.
that number just keeps going up. And
Yeah.
so to go from like an idea to having that kind of impact on people on a daily basis is there literally are 10 of those decisions a day. And I think a great example of that is like the first half of last year, I think was pretty tough economically, right? There was a lot of uncertainty in the market. There was tariffs, which direction are the tariffs going or not going? There's a lot
Yep.
of layoffs, and I think that fear cycle dominated a lot of what happened. I think in early 2025, I think that kind of subsided toward the second half of 2025. And it definitely feels like maybe economically we're moving into a more stable pattern, but so many opportunities, right? Where it's like, how deep do we cut expenses? What's the impact of that versus looking at maybe where there are growth opportunities in the midst of that and saying, hey, this is how we could reallocate our time or effort to really capitalize on a new opportunity that might create. And those are really the hardest decisions to make. And that oftentimes the voices that you hear are the fear-based
Yeah,
voices because
totally.
it's the loudest.
Totally.
Yeah. So cutting through
So
that is
what do
hard.
you do then? Like you are faced with a decision, whatever it is, and you feel that fear. So walk us through because I want leaders to hear that because it's like, yes, you've got to overcome it and still make a decision, still move forward despite that. But for people that maybe are newer in their career and or newer to leadership and they haven't developed that muscle yet, how like what are the tactical things or thoughts that you have to push through that?
Yeah, I mean, I think part of it is understanding our own limitations. So I said
Mhm.
earlier about knowing who we are, right? Having a strong
Yeah.
identity. And part of that is like knowing, hey, in these things, I am really more than competent, right? And in these other areas, I can't be trusted. A great example is pricing, and probably shouldn't say this on a podcast, but like I am the worst at pricing. Like I have said from early on, do not put me in a pricing conversation. Like I am the worst. I love to just give things away. And so I can't be trusted with that. Like I need people who are great at understanding value and communicating that value and working through that with another party who might be willing to pay for that value. But that is
Mhm.
not an area of strength for me. So like I think part of it is like understanding where those things are and then having people around you that are really good at those things. And then being willing to trust them and lean into them and ask them for their input and their support or their guidance in those other areas because those are the places where I think you're most likely to let fear take the reins and make the
Yeah.
decision on your behalf because those aren't areas of strength, right? And so
Yeah.
having people around you, like a good team, whether those, like, even if you're a solopreneur, you can still put a great team around you, right? Like advisors and
Yes.
like even family members and your community. But that's the whole concept, right? Is that we can't do this stuff on our own. Like our ceiling individually is so low compared to if we are working together, the ceiling is so high. It's almost impossible to understate how low our personal ceiling is and how high our group ceiling is, right? If we work together. And so I think it's just about knowing that and then putting the right people around you that you trust and keeping that environment a safe one so that people can question and people can push in the right ways on decision making or thought process or bringing new and fresh ideas to the table.
For sure. You actually just beautifully stated John Maxwell's law of the lid, which is if you're familiar with that one, but
I
it's
know Maxwell, but I no, I've not
yeah.
read that. So I'm
So
glad.
21 irrefutable laws of leadership. The very first one that you need to understand is called the leadership lid. And when I call myself a recovering corporate leader, and so when I left corporate and I heard this concept, it totally blew my mind because I could think back and how true that was. Because when you talk about like your personal lid, like your personal ceiling, like you can't go any higher and your ceiling will limit the entire organization as the CEO, as the president, as the leader, or just your group. They cannot outgrow you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so if you're not constantly growing yourself as a leader, your team, they're just going to keep hitting the ceiling because your for whatever reason, your fear, because that's what we're talking about now, you've created yourself as a bottleneck, you don't trust other people, you don't know how to hold accountable, whatever it is, but that's why as leadership you have to be constantly developing yourself so that your team can develop along with you. So I love how you stated that. It's such an important concept that I don't think I never heard that in a corporate training. Where did you learn that concept? Because I don't remember getting a boardroom corporate training on some of this.
Again, it was just like reflecting on 15 years of experience and
Yeah.
seeing time and time again. I think I had the benefit of being in so many different organizations, like with the being in consulting for the early stage of my career, as well as I spent time in internal audit where I got to see a lot of different parts of the organization and how different management styles and how that impacted like team performance. And that was the first half of my corporate career. The second half of my corporate career was actually doing it. Like I was the one that was responsible. And I got to pressure test all of these really great ideas I heard in the first, or that I observed in the first half of my corporate
Mhm.
career. And it just kind of all led me back to the same thing, which is one of the worst things you could do is lead by fear. And fear and
Yeah.
control are two sides of the same coin. So, like, you're
Yes.
mentioning about the lid being, like leaders who maybe try to over control or micromanage those situations. Again, it's still fear that is the underlying root of that kind of over controlling management style.
Absolutely. You have shared such great insight with us about the power of self awareness, building your team around you. And then what's so unique about you and your career is that not only are you living these insights and sharing them, but you actually built a tool and a whole company. You're one of the co founders that built a tool to help do that. So
Yeah. And,
I love it.
the funny thing about that too, real fast, Katie, is I wrote the book and I got to the end and I was like, that actually felt pretty empty because all I did was just highlight all of these things where stuff can go wrong.
Ah,
And there was no like real clear, hey, and this is what you can do with it. And partially that's because I was a first time author and I didn't realize that being an author means you're writing a model for a consulting business. So that was probably a failure on my part as an author, but yeah, like that somewhat contributed to the fact that we started Cloverleaf because it felt so empty at the end of that, where you're just like, I don't want to just point out flaws, and I'd
right.
rather be a part of the solution.
Oh my gosh. That is just like a life slogan right there. I don't want to just point out flaws. I want to be part of the solution. Cool. Well, Darren, we have a quick lightning round for you
All right, let's do it.
before we wrap up. Are you ready for the lightning
Let's
round?
do it.
So there's 5 questions. And the first one, what is your favorite personality assessment?
Oh, gosh. Yeah, I would probably say Clifton Strengths, or what people used to refer to as Strengths Finder. And,
Yep.
like with every assessment, it's about the language that resonates with you, right? That speaks to something that's very specific for what you're working on at that point in your career. And that was one
Mhm.
that just resonated with me early in my career.
Love it. What is a book that was instrumental in your life?
Now, this is a little bit fascinating because it's not a book that I read, but so my wife read Jim Collins' Good to Great, which is a great book.
Mhm.
And at the time, she was really struggling with her career. We were very early in our career. One of the things Jim Collins says in that book is be the best in the world at something and just
Mhm.
go do it. And so it caused her to think about, like, hey, what's the thing that I could do best in the world? And it caused us to start a business in the childcare space. And that was kind of like my entree to entrepreneurship. And I
Mhm.
think really kind of changed maybe the course of like our family's culture and the fact that like we started Cloverleaf. And so, yeah, I
Yeah.
think Jim Collins' Good to Great is a classic.
Awesome. I love it. You may have answered this in that question too, but what's one piece of like the best advice you've been given?
First year at Arthur Anderson, I worked with a person who was just a couple of years ahead of me in her career. And I was having a little bit of imposter syndrome because I'd just come out of college and I'm like, why are people listening to me in these meetings?
So true.
I have no experience. So we left and I'm kind of like saying this. I'm shocked that they like paused and listened to what I had to say. And she was like, Darren, don't you realize that none of us know what we're doing? Like, it doesn't matter how many years you've been in your career or like what, like, we're all just making it up as we go. And that was just like so freeing for me. I was like, oh, okay, that makes
Yeah,
sense. And it's still true today. Like, I'm
still
regularly just
true.
making it up as I go.
I love it. On the flip side, what is a failure that you cherish?
Oh man, I bought a car wash once and
Really?
it didn't sink us financially. I wouldn't say it was a win, but I felt like I learned a lot about my own personal limits as an entrepreneur. Like, I think also we kind of fall into the trap of like quick, easy ways to make money. And you're like, oh, it's cash based business. You just leave it out there and people put coins in it. Like, no, no.
Runs itself.
One of my favorite things to say is there's no such thing as passive income. That is a total lie. Because if you want to make income, you still have to do something to maintain whatever it is that
Yeah.
the asset or the thing that you built. And I hate that concept of people chasing passive income because it's a lie.
Yeah. Cool. Final question. Final question. I saved the best for last. So, you have been a speaker before. So when the next time that you walk out on stage, what is your walk-on music going to be? What's your hype song?
Oh man, that is so hard. I'm afraid to answer this question because my daughter is super into music and there's just no right answer for
This is a
this
fear-based decision for you.
because I'm going to get judged by her for sure. Oh man, I would say "Beautiful Day" by U2.
Love it. Love it. Well, Darrin, thank you so much for joining us on Think Outside the Boss. Before we go, tell everyone, where can they find you? How do they follow you? If they want to get your book or Cloverleaf, where do they go?
Yeah, so cloverleaf.me, so not .com. I think you'll end up with like cold storage or something if you do that. So cloverleaf.me. You just go to that website. You can actually start a free trial of an AI coach. Any of our socials are Cloverleaf Me. So all one word, Cloverleaf Me. And that's on pretty much every one of the social media networks. And then you can find me on LinkedIn, connect with me. Would love it.
Awesome. Darrin, thank you so much. And it has just been a joy to hear you share your story and your insights on leadership with everyone. So thank you for joining us. And I hope you have a fantastic rest of the day.
Thanks, Katie.
Thanks for listening. If you liked something from this episode, hit share and send it to a friend or fellow leader. Don't forget to follow the show and leave a review because it helps leaders like you find us faster. This episode of Think Outside the Boss was produced by Volt Productions. I'll see you next week. And until then, keep moving forward.